This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. If you don't already subscribe to Paramount Plus, please use our affiliate link by going to talkthroughmedia.com/Paramount Plus. Using our affiliate link gives us a little credit, which helps us to keep bringing you great content. U.S. residents only.
Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Talk Through. I'm Brian.
Yeah, I'm LT.
And we're back after an unexpectedly long hiatus.
And since it's obligatory that we say it, it has been a long road getting from there to here.
That it has. Yeah, there's been all sorts of stuff going on. Personally, but the only thing that's the same is that I'm still living in the same spot. But so I'm still in Oklahoma, but yeah, I've had it's been a whole bunch of stuff going on. We apologize for the absence. We hope to cover Star Trek Picard, which let's face it, was awesome. And even Lower Decks, which we never covered season 3. We plan to get to Lower Decks season 4 when it comes out, which I assume will be right after Strange New Worlds is done. But we'll cover the episodes that we didn't cover. It'll just take us some time to get to it. Main thing we want to do now is just to stay current, so if we can just release an episode a week, for right now, I'll consider that a victory. And we apologize for the episodes that we've missed. Want to say thank you for all of you that have stayed subscribed, and especially to the Patreon supporters who have continued to support us through the absence of the main podcast. Of course, Rebinge, DS9, and the Prodigy podcast are still going, or still been going. But as far as Picard and Lower Decks and well, since this has been out, we haven't done an episode of Strange New Worlds, obviously, but anyway, we're back, and we hope to be back on a weekly basis. So anyway.
Yep. And like I said, while real life is unrelenting, we appreciate the fact that, you guys have hung in, and we're going to do the best we can to deliver what we are known for.
Yeah. I've gone through, I'll just say real quick. I've gone through a job gain, a job loss, another sort of job gain and loss in a way that just not just I had some extra work come, and then it's gone again. I've had my wife move in and then move out again, and we're filing for divorce now. And I have another job as well. So anyway, it's just a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm starting a new business too. That's whole other thing. But yeah, so it's been a lot going on. But podcasting on Star Trek is, I think, one of the most important things that I personally need to do to stay sane, because it is one of the most pleasurable things that I get to do, and covering these episodes with LT. I cherish it, and it's been a long time coming, and it was a long time coming today. Actually, we were supposed to start about 4.5 hours ago. but anyway, we're back, and let's get on with it. So
let's do it.
We're going to be covering season 2, episode 1, titled "The Broken Circle." We mentioned the Patreon, and just so you know, we release the episodes to Patreon supporters ahead of everyone else. They will be uncensored, unfiltered. That's available for you for as little as $1 a month. And that helps to cover the costs of doing the podcast and maintaining the website. So if you're interested, go to patreon.com/Star Trek TTM to sign up. And we appreciate the support. So first we have this episode. So season 2, episode 1, we're back to cover the season premiere of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, titled The Broken Circle. It is written by the co-showrunners Henry Alonso Myers and Akiva Goldsman, and directed by co-executive producer Chris Fisher. I believe he's still co-exec. The description from ParamountPlus.com is as follows. Season premiere. A distress call from Lieutenant Noonien-Singh compels Spock to disobey orders and take the USS Enterprise and its crew into disputed space, risking renewed hostilities with the Klingons in a bid to aid their shipmate. The stardate is 2369.2. We still can't figure out stardates. They seem to make no rhyme or reason. The air date is June 15th, 2023, with a runtime of 52 minutes and 41 seconds. LT, what did you think of The Broken Circle?
Well, I had to give The Broken Circle 9 out of 10. Have fun storming the castle, boys.
And I am going to give it, I think it got an extra half mark for just being back.
Yeah.
And of course, this show, we talked a lot about it during season 1, how every single episode was at least a 9. And I think it was like at least a 9.25 or 9.2. That also fits for me in this case. I gave it a 9.5. Heisenberg like super stimulant concoctions, but green instead of blue. And that's a Breaking Bad reference if you don't know it. Or in terms of old, TNG Star Trek, I give it a 9.5 crossfield kit bashes. So
indeed.
Yes, because that's definitely what it was.
And we're going to talk about that.
I'm sure we are. We did not get, I'm just going to confirm this, but I don't believe we got any ratings from, no, we got no ratings at all from our listeners, which I understand, especially since we haven't been on. Hopefully next week we'll have a bit of a pick me up on that. So let's move on to our yeses.
Yes.
All right. I want to say, I know James, the augmented sailor, had a yes that he liked, but I don't know if I have it here. Anyway, we'll just stick with the standard. All right. We don't have any feedback at all from our listeners this time, so that should make it a pretty quick episode. So, LT, what are your yeses for this week?
Well, I'm going to kick it off with cinematography. We have both talked about how awesome the look of the show is, how well they do the space scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been a strong suit of theirs, but I was impressed again, just from, apparently they've used, I don't know if it was Webb telescope or Hubble telescope footage for some of their backdrops. So some of the space scenes are actual space.
Yeah.
They talked about it in the ready room a bit, but just the whole watching the Enterprise go, watching the D7 come out of warp, just the model work and the cinematography is just absolutely phenomenal. Can't say enough about it. And as we've said, it's been sort of a hallmark of the new era of Trek we've seen on Paramount Plus. But something about the Strange New Worlds, they're just doing it right, and it's impressive, and I like it. I was very impressed with Starbase One. That throughout the history of Star Trek, we've seen big space stations and space docks, but I really like the model that they've built for Star. I enjoyed sort of the fly around sequence they did. You see all the shuttles and all the other little ships flying around. You see the ships that are inside the dock, and then you cut in and show the Enterprise docked and under repair. I just really like what they've done with that. It's just showing that they've definitely gotten their beard, they've gotten their feet on the ground, and I think that the production value that we've seen just goes a long way in furthering the quality of the writing that we've gotten as well. One of the notes I made was talking about the Klingons. Now, there've been, we weathered part of the storm through Discovery when they're talking about what they've done to the Klingons. We've seen that, for Picard, Worf still looks like Worf.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see them, in my mind, kind of transition the Klingon makeup and the prosthetics into more something we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
And it's better than it used to be. You can tell that they put a lot more work into some of the prosthetic pieces, but we are getting the vibe that we were expecting rather than the big shock that we got initially. Just for the listeners out there, there was a guy on YouTube that made a how to explain the Klingons without retconning. And I can't remember the guy's name, but it was really good. And it actually made a lot of sense.
Interesting. I'd like to see that video. Maybe if you can find it. Yeah,
I shot the link to you. I shot the link to you. It should be in the chat group.
Okay.
And I know Brian's going to talk about it, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. It was kind of nice to see our conjectural Strange New Worlds crossfield. And when it first popped up, I thought it was a TOS era Miranda.
Yeah.
Just by the layout and the way it looked. And it wasn't until I looked at it a little harder and noticed that it had the segmentation in the saucer section.
Yeah.
So definitely good model work on the production crew. Again, you can tell that they took our cut and paste arguments from that first season of Picard to heart. I don't think they're going to do that again.
No.
And we've seen a lot of variance as to ship types. But the fact they called it out as a crossfield made me feel better to think, well, okay, they've kept those in service and they've refitted them. And so there still may be some sister ships of Discovery still roaming around.
Yeah.
And of course, the other side of that is, since we know that this ship was potentially built from spare parts, that also might explain why it didn't look exactly like the crossfields we were used to.
Yeah. Well, and also it makes sense if you think about it, right? The crossfield was an experimental type of engine, which, they've pretty much killed. They're not doing anymore, as we know. So it stands to reason that, they pretty much probably killed whatever research they were doing on it and are If like at the same time, they're not going to throw away any starships that, were out there. But also, for all we know, like the Crossfield class, we don't know if the Crossfield class was this prior to the Discovery in the Glen. Like the Discovery in the Glen may just be two, Spore Hub drive augmented class Crossfield classes,
They could have been
a
the
variant.
Two of them could have been one-offs.
Right, exactly. For all we know. So there's that. But I mean, the thing that I was when I realized that it was a Crossfield, I was like, well, I guess it stands to reason though that they would put a different kind of drive on there, and like, because otherwise that weird nacelle configuration, and that nacelle configuration was pretty weird. I mean, compared to other starships, I was looking at it last night, and I think that the Crossfield class, or the Discovery, was something like 752.9 meters. If I'm going by memory, I don't know for sure if that was right, but it was something like that. And
it was very long.
Yes, much longer than even like a Constitution class. The Connies, I think, are what? I want to say 389. Is it 389? Anyway,
it's something in that ballpark.
Yeah, much longer starship, and if you think about the way that the nacelles were configured and all that, it was, they were much farther away from the rest of the ship. The way that they were swept back was, pretty radical, but also the way that they were configured was way back, like at the end. So, most of that 700 and whatever meters was probably nacelle, where, you're not going to be able to say that for any other kind of starships, Federation. So I thought it was interesting, but the reason why I said in the rating about a kit bash, that's what it felt like. It looked like, how we've seen so many of the Miranda class like look different, or, become a different class starship. They're basically pretty much the same, except they'll do this and they'll do that to it. The same goes for the Excelsior. They had the flanges on the Enterprise B, and we've seen a couple other ones that are a little bit different than the standard Excelsior.
The famous ships of Wolf 359,
right?
They built the Centaur class, which was basically like a Mirandized Excelsior.
Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting, and I mean, I understand why they used a Crossfield, because they had a model and they could start with that, and it's also good to use something that is from the same era, that is familiar. Like if it was some other class, you'd just kind of go, well, big deal, but Crossfield class, you go, like my reaction, oh, Crossfield class, oh, that's interesting. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting. So,
yep. I think one of my next definite yeses was I've become more and more a fan of the way Ethan Peck is doing Spock now.
Yeah.
We all had our reservations, those of us that are, were TOS fans first. There are certain things that, we've taken with definite, I won't say hesitation, but any dealing with canonical characters being recasted now, and a lot of people were awfully upset about how they handled Spock during Discovery, but I've definitely grown to like the way Ethan Peck's doing his thing. And this episode to me began to show the transition to that Spock to the Spock we know. That he's definitely growing into the character and he's definitely doing things that are becoming, dare I say, Spockier, more Spockish. And I'm really enjoying what he's doing with the character. In the same way, I'm really enjoying Jess Bush's Chapel.
Yeah, I am too.
I am really beginning to, as much as I liked her last season, I really like her now. I think one of the next things then is we're starting to see them flesh Dr. Mbenga out, which you take a character that had, what, 2 appearances in TOS, and now, even through last season, we're starting to see him get more depth and more nuance, and definite props to the actor. I know you're going to talk about some things that I'm going to let go, but it's the fact that Mbenga's been around and he's seen some things.
Mm-hmm.
And this episode lets us get a little more of that depth to, perhaps shade in the facts of why he is like he is. And my last yes, I'm going to have to say a big yes for Commander Pelia. That I didn't know how much I would like, Carol Kane in a Starfleet role, but just her whole thing on the bridge with Spock, the whole conversation of, these are the textbook signs of a warp core breach, but I just checked the engines and the engines are fine. So are you trying to steal a starship? And the whole Vulcans don't lie. And I think her character is going to be a lot of fun because, we weren't really cool with the fact that, Hemmer was taken from us so soon. I mean, we really liked that character. He had a lot of promise. And even though she's primarily known for her comedic work, and just to make sure that everybody caught that, my rating was solely off of the performance she gave in The Princess Bride, which is still one of my favorite movies. I think she's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be interesting to see how she's going to fit into the role of chief engineer. And the fact that we've got a chief engineer that has been around a while, the fact that she was teaching engineering at the academy and she's talking about, something about 100 years. And I'm thinking, that's kind of interesting. You've got somebody that's been on staff for however many generations, but I'm just excited to see what they're going to do with her. I had my reservations when I first heard the announcement, but I think it's going to work out, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with her in the upcoming episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm holding out my opinion on her at this point. It's an interesting choice. I don't know. She's always got some kind of like character effect when she does a role. So I don't know if it was because of that. But I mean, I found her interesting. I'm not sold on the character yet, I guess you could say. Right? Like they could have brought back Scotty, and put him there, but they didn't do that, which I understand kind of why. It gives them a little more flexibility and things they can do with the characters. They can bring Scotty back in, season 3 or season 4 or whatever. Just make it like a rotating engineer position like season 1 of TNG was.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, Discovery has been in a way. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I didn't put it in my notes as a yes, no, or not good enough, but I'm still. It's definitely not a yes for me. It's not a no for me. It's just well, we'll wait and see for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what have you got for yeses, Brian?
Well, we already talked about the Crossfield thing. I had no idea that Babs Olusamukun, I think is how you say his name. Anyway, we'll just call him Babs just for simplicity's sake. I had no idea that he was a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yep.
But he is. And, there was some discussion in the ready room about that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went and researched it, and I actually found a couple of YouTube videos where he talks about it. And yeah, he's like he's actually like won some championships and that he's like a 2-time Pan American champion for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and had some other, I think, a US champion or something. So that's pretty impressive. I mean, this is not like, your kind of celebrity, jiu-jitsu, or like, because I've been thinking about that quite a bit over the last few months after watching the Elvis movie. Like Elvis, gets a black belt in karate, just because he's Elvis, or becomes like a deputy because he's Elvis. This is not like the celebrity type thing. Like he's literally like a black belt. And so what we saw in that, in the couple of scenes of fighting, that's like a legit thing. And he talked a little bit about it in the ready room, saying how he was worked with the stunt coordinators and all that on it. So I was impressed. I had no idea that he was a martial arts guy. So and it's kind of an interesting, it's interesting like character choice for him, because like I could see him like in security, for example. So for a doctor to be like a martial arts guy, it's kind of interesting. And it was also kind of interesting, the whole like super soldier injection thing that they did. And I saw that and I was like wondering, that's interesting. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. I had no idea. I enjoyed those scenes as well. I do agree with something that you said in later on, but yeah, it was interesting to see. Anyway, the Mabenga and Chapel scenes, which part of that you would include, but also like when they're about to jump out the airlock, all of those like one-on-one scenes I thought were really good. And I agree with you bringing up Jess Bush, how good she is in this role. Is it the same Chapel that we saw on TOS? No. Is it okay that it's not the same Chapel? Definitely yes, because I think that Chapel that we saw back then was inappropriate to 2023. I just, too submissive, I guess you could say, for being in that kind of role.
Well, and I would also say that that's how many years in the future, and are we the same people then in our past as we are now?
Yeah.
That our experience and the things that we go through shape us, and we're different.
Yeah.
So it's, in a way, I can see those two not, in any sort of they're not necessarily in disagreement, because we're looking at two different points in her life.
Right.
So maybe some things will happen that make her like she was in TOS. We don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. Spocking emotional over Chapel. And of course Mabenga as well, but especially Chapel, like he was brought to tears. I thought that was good. And, I'm interested to see this kind of like emotional compromise that he seems to be going through. I guess at some point he's going to recover from that, because he certainly becomes more logical by the time we see him in TOS. So anyway, that's interesting. And Spock's go phrase, I want the ship to go now, or something to that. I think he said, I would like the ship to go. Anyway, I thought that was good. Very Spock, because it was very matter of fact, very literal, not catchy, like, hit it, or let's
warp
fly.
Me.
Yeah. Or warp me. Yeah. So I thought that was good all around. So I think that's it for our yeses. So let's move on to our no's. And that one, we definitely do have two versions. So we'll have our standard. No! And then I believe this was James the Augmented Sailor said this one. Or maybe it was me. I don't know. But anyway.
Whoever.
Which do you like?
It's a Pike note.
Yeah. Which do you like?
Well, it is, since we tend to pull our things from the series we're covering, I'll tend to the Pike.
Yes. And, for that matter, I remember what we were talking about for yeses. And I think it was me that came up with this yes. It was this one.
Now we're talking.
Anyway, yeah. Anyway, I found it. Let's move on to our no. So again, we don't have any no's from our listeners. So what do you have for no's?
Well, my no is just, once again, we've got the old warp core breach in the dock gambit. Just seems like that there are two tropes of Star Trek that are in play this season, and that they seem to always go back to. And one of them happens to be, oh no, we're having a warp core breach in Stardock. Because it just seems to be that's their go-to thing if they're going to be doing the other thing that I'm going to talk about later.
Yeah.
I just was going, oh, it's a warp core breach. I'm so surprised.
Yep. Well, my first no is not enough Pike. So it could be a not good enough, but I'm going to put it here just because I didn't get the Pike that I wanted. And I believe this was you that put in that note for an explanation.
It was that apparently this was during the time that Anson Mount's significant other was having a baby. So he actually, from what I gathered, he shot that scene and was absent from this episode because he was attending to the birth of his child. Which, if you're going to be gone, that's as good a thing to be gone for. But it was my understanding that this was during the end of the pregnancy, and that's why he wasn't there.
That is a good enough explanation. I was still sad to see him missing, but my other no that I put down was not to do with the actual episode. but it wouldn't be me. Much like, it wouldn't be LT if he didn't bring in some things to question. It wouldn't be me if I didn't bring up something lacking in the app. So, in the case of the app, it seems to do a much better job now in identifying the stopping point as far as an episode is concerned, right?
Mhm.
So if you leave and you come back, it seems to know where you were. Okay. This is not true for things like the Ready Room. Okay. So I was trying to watch the Ready Room last night, or not last night, Saturday night, while I was delivering. So my new job, it's not the greatest job, but I like it in a way. It keeps me kind of centered in a way. It's I'm doing deliveries for, I'm I'm delivering pizza. What can I say? So I'll like listen to stuff and even like watch stuff in the background, not paying attention to the screen, of course, while I'm delivering. So while I'm out, driving around, I'll listen to things that are playing on my phone. So I was trying to listen / watch, but not so much watch, the episode of the Ready Room. And what kept happening is as it would switch, say, from 5G to 4G or to Wi-Fi, picking up like a Cox signal, which I have Cox cable, it would lose where I was in the episode and it would start over. And this happened 6 times at least. In fact, it was probably more like 8 or 10 times. And I would get to a point, usually sometime during the Ethan Peck interview. A couple of times it happened earlier than that, like in the stuff prior to, like when they were talking about the fighting and some other stuff that happened in the episode. It would just start over. And I after trying to watch it on my phone for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours like that, I just finally gave up and watched it last night, at home. But it was kind of like just really annoying, just very annoying that it would do that. And I've seen this before. It only seems to happen with like clips like from the Ready Room and that. So if it's a main episode, it seems to keep track of where you were. But if it's like supplemental stuff like the Ready Room is or other clips, it loses exactly where you were and it starts over. So that's my story on that.
Well, oddly enough, Brian, I've not had nearly the trouble with the phone app for Paramount Plus that I have the Fire Stick app. Is that I haven't been able to watch anything on Paramount Plus on my Fire Stick in about 2 weeks. And
oh yeah,
that's where I'm frustrated, because before the phone would, you'd go for about 5 minutes and it would give you that, oops, we had an error.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have to start over.
Yeah.
But the phone has been great lately. Ready Room has been great lately, but for whatever reason, there's something going on with the Fire Stick, and I've not been able to watch anything on the big screen for a bit.
Well, that sucks. That definitely sucks. I think there was another thing that I was thinking about putting in the nose here, and I don't see it. So perhaps I put it in not good enough. I know there was one thing I thought maybe I put in not good enough that I didn't. So if I think of it, I'll bring it up then. But anyway, let's go to our not good enough section.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough.
And we did have an alternate for that, and that was this one.
That is not what I suggested.
I believe that was from Memento Mori.
I believe you're right.
Yes. All right, LT, what do you have for not good enough this week?
Well, my not good enoughs are just the things that I was going really about. Lon and her augment stomach. I don't the whole drinking thing. While it sort of reminded me of the scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, I'm sorry, when the Klingon looked like he was gonna lose it, that was almost like a little too good. And I'm thinking, okay, how much blood wine did they drink to get to this point? And if they're, and again, I have to beg indulgence of all my Marine brothers, but a friend of mine in the Marines used to say, you drink till you throw up and then start drinking again. It just seemed like that Lon drinking that much blood wine, it just kind of got me, because obviously she's got some kind of incredible fortitude, or she's got some augment DNA left in her digestive tract for her to pull that one off. I put in my not good enough.
I hadn't thought about that, just to say. I hadn't thought about that, but now that you mention it, I guess you're kind of right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had to put in my not good enoughs, not Spock's go phrase, but the go phrase bit, because it just seemed like to me that we're in this tense thing and we're doing, we're trying to escape and we're trying to get the Enterprise going. And then it's like, blunk, they dropped the whole conversation about, say your thing, your thing. And I just thought that the placement of the go phrase conversation just kind of killed the buzz of the whole tension of the escape scene, because I thought it was, it was tense. They were getting the pace up, and then it's like we had this sudden dash of cold water where we just take a break to have a conversation about what your giddy up phrase is going to be. So, like I said, just the pacing part of that, I think it just sort of slowed the cadence of the scene down, and then they picked right back up and went back to it. One of my not good enoughs is like, is the Enterprise the most stolen starship in Starfleet? Because again, that's the other trope I was going to mention earlier, is it seems like that throughout her career, how many times has the Enterprise been hijacked, stolen, not necessarily mutinied, but it seems like she's got rather a storied history of being appropriated for non-order means.
Yeah, certainly if you include the D in that, that is definitely true. But
well, not even looking at the D. I mean, just look at TOS.
Yeah.
So they were hijacked by the aliens to go to the core of the galaxy. They were, Spock stole it to go to Talos 4. You go into the movies that.
Yeah. Star Trek 3.
Yeah. Yeah. So it just seems like that the Enterprise, besides the reputation of, being the flagship of the fleet, seems to be, she gets hijacked a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, that is a tropey thing. I mean, I'm sure if we went back and looked at, say, the Defiant or Voyager, we'd probably see quite a bit of hijacking there. I can't remember the NX-01 if it had ever been hijacked like that, but
I think it just
maybe
just for off the cuff without looking anywhere.
Mhm.
I know of at least 2 times that happened.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, but yeah.
But like I said, it just seemed to me that it's kind of a thing with the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Um,
I would agree with that.
One of my next things is, while I enjoyed their scenes planetside, it seems to me that maybe they used some stuff they've used before, because I don't know. It just seemed like the clothes, whatever Chapel was wearing, seemed to be the standard Starfleet covert mission undercover uniform.
Yeah.
It reminded me of something that I saw Giorgio wearing at some point.
Yeah. I would
It,
agree
it
with
just
that.
see, it's like we have sort of a vibe for when we're doing undercover clothes for the crew, and they seem to be fitting into the same sort of, I don't want to say trope on that, but the same sort of vibe, the same sort of look.
Yeah. And I wondered if they used some things from like the Discovery, and maybe that was part of the reason why they
It
used the
could very well
Crossfield
be.
class, because um you know, I thought about it, and if they use the Crossfield, suddenly they don't, the corridors and whatnot, they could use the sick bay, eh, so that, and of course, like the Discovery shot in Toronto, and I believe Strange New Worlds is shot in Mississauga, which is, for those of you that don't know Ontario geography, which probably the vast majority of you, Mississauga is next to Toronto, and so it's like it's the next city over, and so it's like a huge metro suburb of Toronto. It's, I think the last time I checked, it was like 750,000. It's probably quite a bit more than that now. Anyway, so it stands to reason that they could use each other's sets if they needed to. So,
Or use each other's wardrobe and props.
exactly. Right. Because it's basically, maybe 25 miles away. So,
Yep. Well, I also wanted to mention, while I enjoyed the Carter fight scene, I just thought it was a little long.
yeah.
It just seemed like there was, it was cool that they did the fighting. I enjoyed the way they did it, but it just seemed like that fight scene just went on for a while. That they could have, that just, like I said, just seemed a little drawn out to me. I think the next thing would be, after all this tension, and when we saw the Klingons in the first part of the episode, they seemed to be really angry and ready to start a fight and ready to go back to war. And just seemed like, after Spock talked to the captain, that the Klingons were a lot more convivial, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
when they were interacting with the Federation people on the planet. And that just seemed kind of, well, they're awfully chilled out. For 10 minutes ago, they were ready to restart the war with the Federation. So that just kind of didn't sit right with me. And I guess the last thing was, I enjoyed the escape from the Crossfield, but when Doc and Nurse Chapel did the Yondu drill from Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't know if the practical side of me is going, well, how long could you survive in, hard vacuum without a suit on? And that just kind of, you're not going to have this long scene where you suddenly just get frosty and die.
Mm-hmm.
That, I guess, I had too many of those things back during the early part of my education from NASA when they talked about, oh, well, an unprepared human body in hard vacuum of space, your blood would boil, your skin would freeze, your organs would explode, all that sort of thing. It just seemed like that they should have come out of that a lot worse than they did. So that was my other. I didn't want to give it a no because it really, I mean, you could sort of say, well, they were only out there for so long and they were immediately beamed on board the Enterprise. And it's like, yeah, but they had frost on their faces and it just kind of, like I said, just kind of was a little too much Guardians of the Galaxy for me. And I want to say, yes, I like the movie. I am a Star-Lord fan on another day, but I just thought it was a little too much hard vacuum for no suit.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, particularly with the close up on Lahan or whatever you say that, was the eye makeup she had. It reminded me a little bit of Bad Kirk during The Enemy Within, that old TOS episode. Like, she definitely had this like dark eyeliner kind of makeup. It wasn't like the entire, like eyelids. It was just like around the eyelashes, but it was very noticeable. And anyway, I thought it was very old school. So not really like, well, I put this as a not good enough just because I didn't really have any other place to put it. But these ex-Federation and ex-Klingon soldiers who want to start up the war. LT, did you get a Ferengi vibe? Because I did.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It just seemed like they were awfully worried about money.
Yeah. And, like, I thought that the Federation, even at this point, was not based on money anymore. So that's the whole thing. We can have a conversation going on in circles about that. Also, you still need wires to hotwire a door. And I thought, man, that's very, 1970s, hotwire a car, so
that even in the future, you still pull the bundle of multicolored wires out of the panel.
Yeah. And it wasn't like, like something like we'd see, say, Data do, which would be to re-circuit the board and, or Wesley Crusher, sit there and,
pull
move
the chips, rearrange the isolinear chips.
Right. Exactly. So anyway, I noticed that. I thought I just had to chuckle with that, but it's 23rd century, so I guess so, but I just thought it was funny. All right, so I guess that's it for our not good enoughs. This is going to be a pretty quick, I think, open hailing frequencies, because our feedback section, we don't have any feedback. So it's basically just our notes, and I don't see any notes that either of us have. So do you have anything else you want to interject about this episode?
I don't think I do.
I mean, the only thing I'm going to say is really, I was happy to see it come back. We've had a couple of months without Star Trek, and I've missed it. We haven't talked about Picard at all. Haven't even attempted to record an episode on Picard. But I mean, I'll just say, I thought season 3 of Picard was by far the best season of Picard. And it's certainly, without rating them, I would say it was as good or possibly even better than season 1 of of Strange New Worlds, and says a lot. It was
saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly really good. Really, really
Oh
good.
yeah, and certainly, in my opinion, better than the first 2 seasons.
Oh, unquestionably,
just head and shoulders.
Yeah, not even close. There were moments of both season 1 and 2 that I loved to Picard, but when it comes to as a whole, there were just some really disappointing parts of Picard. Season 3 of Picard was not a disappointment at all. It was, and that's why I say it was on par with season 1 of Strange New Worlds. I said possibly exceeding it. I don't know. I'd have to go back and kind of watch both at the same time and try to figure it out. But it was definitely a great season of Picard. And it was good to see that. And we really haven't released any episodes of Lower Decks, although we recorded a couple of episodes, which I was just telling LT, we may have lost those. So we may need to, we'll probably just, if we ever get to those, we'll just re-record. Season 3 of Lower Decks was awesome. I can't wait for season 4. Anyway, we're not really talking about this episode. I thought that this was a good beginning. I loved it, especially on the first watch. The second watch, not quite as much. Really felt the lack of Pike in the episode, and to a lesser extent, number one, I want to see much more of Rebecca Romaine in season 2.
Agreed.
And hopefully we will. I think we'll be seeing a lot of both of those characters next episode. Yeah, so it was great to have it back. So we've got to spot the references. I just had a couple of things that I put in here, but it was just really on the start of the episode. There, of course, if you go to Trek Culture and their ups and downs from Star Trek Strange New Worlds 2.1, The Broken Circle, there's a whole thing in there about them. So I refer to that. We can basically just skip through most of this, I think, but I'll just give a couple things noticeable. We had the crossfield, which we already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Starbase 1. We also saw another Discovery thing. We saw drone ships, which, haven't really been talked about, and they weren't like the dot, whatever the dot was, .7.
Yeah.
We didn't see those too much, or at least I didn't really notice them, but they did have the drones from season 2. We saw an Archer class again, which we know that number 1 had taken out an Archer class. That's how the season started last season.
Yeah.
She got an Archer class. That's like in some ways similar to, what was it? It wasn't exactly similar.
It's very similar to
the Kelvin.
But it's also very similar to the Saladin class destroyers from the old Franz Joseph technical manual.
That's right. We saw a Farragut class. At least that's what we're calling it.
Mm-hmm.
We saw where, we heard mention of genetic engineering. We see the Enterprise get stolen again. There's I don't have it written down, and I really didn't see anything about this. Maybe you did, LT. I don't know, but Commander Pelia is a Lanthanite.
Yep.
Did you notice also she has a different badge than everybody else?
Well, she has a different badge and her Delta.
Right. Yeah, her Delta is different. It had like a thing behind the Delta,
Mhm.
which was in some ways similar to, I don't know, a few
It's
things
sort
we've
of
seen.
It's almost like the comm badges you saw in like maybe Voyager,
Yeah,
and they've had a backer for the deltas for cadets.
right.
That the cadet one basically is a square with the delta superimposed on it. This one is sort of like there's like a little black bar behind it,
Yeah.
and it makes me wonder, is that a staff thing, or
Yeah.
is there some other deal?
It'll be
And
interesting to see if her badge changes once she's like made the chief engineer. Maybe it will change. We'll see. I
we
assume
will.
she'll still have that other, um, you know, brooch on her, which is, I guess, lanthanite. And I don't recall us hearing about the lanthanites before.
That's correct, because those are a new species.
Yes, supposedly they were living for thousands of years on the Earth, and I like I don't know what that means exactly. Hopefully, we'll get that flushed out a little bit over the season. But and I assume that she's just a one season kind of engineer. She won't be she won't she won't be back because she's recurring. She's not full
Right.
cast member. But we'll see.
Well, I was trying to remember his name. And what was the guy's name from Assignment Earth?
Gary 7.
Gary 7.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that there have been aliens living on Earth pre first contact.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing with the lanthanite, I was going, well, that's not too far fetched
No.
that there might have been someone living amongst us, studying us in our pre-warp days.
Well, I thought of as old as Methuselah, right?
No, was it Flint?
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, the whole thing, in the Bible, Methuselah
Yep.
was supposedly 959 years old or something like that.
Right.
So there's that, and certainly I could see that. It also reminded me of the event, which also had aliens on Earth that were very much, looked human, but were very much older than a typical human, right? I don't know if you ever watched the event. And once we talk about the one of the other shows that we're covering, Dead City, we'll talk more about that because I had, when I was watching it last night, I had sort of like a three worlds collide kind of thing. We'll get to that next time. And I'll explain that after we stop recording. But anyway,
well, I was thinking of I started thinking about Highlander.
Yeah, exactly. That's another way to put it. Yeah. So anyway, about to spot the references. Of course, we have the Klingons, we have disputed space. The planet, I don't think we've ever heard of before. I think it was Calthazar or something like that. Calthazar 4. I don't know if that's right or not. Hold on. It is Cajitar 4. Sorry, Cajitar 4. And yes, that was only ever mentioned in this particular episode. And show. What else can we bring up? We see the Klingons, of course, and you talked about how they're kind of like bridging the gap. I noticed that when we saw the view screen of the Klingon, it looked like the bridge of one of the Discovery Klingon ships. Didn't look so much like TOS movie or TNG Klingon ships, where it turned much like it looked like ornamental, like a lot of gold in that I saw in the background. So
Yeah.
that was one thing. I guess that kind of helps to bridge the gap. And we see Admiral April again. That's another thing. So April was, of course, the first captain of the 1701, and we know that Pike served under him as first officer.
Mhm.
Anyway, a lot of that stuff we just said was just off the cuff, so we probably missed some things. And if we did, send us something in the comments or comment on the episode. As far as Shipwide announcements, we're not going to go into news unless you have something that you want to cover.
I don't have any news.
No, I don't either. So we'll just play it anyway. I did look up Star Trek Strange New Worlds on Parrot Analytics, and I've noticed that they haven't produced any insights. There's like a page that they do for insights. They haven't done any for the last few weeks. So yeah, the last one they did covered the week of May 27th to June 2nd. So they're a couple weeks out. And I didn't really see anything as far as Star Trek. I did see something. The Orville was in that last one. I guess there's been more chatter about the Orville coming back. But aside from Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, and Picard, that's worth saying. I didn't have that in the Picard was still charting as of in May. It was still number 10 as of the week of May 13th to May 19th. So it had a 26.1 times the demand of an average show. When I checked out the United States ratings, it listed Picard as in the down 39.9% demand. So it's fading, but it's still averaging 24.7 times the demand of an average show. Now, compared to Strange New Worlds got a 24.2. So it actually, Picard is still out charting Strange New Worlds, at least in terms of the last few days. But it still ranks it as a 24.2, which puts it in the outstanding, which is 2.7% of all shows. So it's still pretty good. To get to the exceptional, that is considered 0.2% of all shows. You need to be in the 32 times. So 24.2 is not bad, certainly. It is up 19.2% as of, let me just check this and make sure this is still the same. Oh, it's actually higher now. Okay. All right. So what I said is wrong. It is now 24.8 times the demand of an average show. So it's still in the same rating, but it's going up. It is 21.4% increase over the last 30 days. So that's good. Mm-hmm. And that puts it at a 98.8 percentile rank. So it is within the top 1.2% of all shows. So that's pretty good. If it was judging IQ, that would put it in Mensa. So, so anyway, that's pretty good compared to, let's say, how it's doing in Canada. Not as well, 14.5, but it is up 14.8, but it's in the 99 percentile. So it's doing better. I'll just check UK just to see. UK, it's at 15 times there. Demand going up 10.6%, also in the 99th percentile. So anyway, that's about all I have. Let's move on. So to submit your theories and feedback, go to talkthroughmedia.com/feedback, where you can submit text or audio. You can call 216-232-6146 and leave a voicemail. You can email us at strangenewworlds@talkthroughmedia.com. Most feedback that we get is usually in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group. That's at facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts with an S on the end. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Star Trek TTM. LT?
All right. Well, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can like our page on Facebook. That's facebook.com/talkthroughmedia. And while you're there, write us a review. You can share us on Facebook and retweet us on Twitter, especially when we post the new episode is out. You can subscribe to the Talk Through Media YouTube channel, which is where you'll find our newest episodes first. You can subscribe to us in Apple Podcast or the podcast client of your choice. And while you're there, give us a rating or a review. You can go to podchaser.com, where you can rate and review the podcast and even individual episodes. Finally, the best way to help us keep the lights on is to support us via Patreon. We would like to thank our Patreon supporters, Jeff Lorenzen, Andrew Davis, Morning Pace, Mike Johnson, Robert Kaiser, Jeff Gentry, Kevin Lyle, Michael Carrier, Kim Vogley, Kyle McAdams, James Robbins, and me.
And you. And we want to welcome Jeff Lorenzen. He is brand new. Well, he's not actually that brand new. He's been supporting us since December. So thank you so much, especially, with there not being too much going on with the main shows. I know Prodigy was out, but and of course DS9. But in terms of the new shows, it's been a while since we had anything since Prodigy. So thank you so much for your support, and it's appreciated. Believe me. All the podcasts from Talk Through Media can be found on the Talk Through Media All-Inclusive feed, which includes Rebinge DS9, the Star Trek Discovery podcast, which you may have gotten this on. The Star Trek Strange New Worlds Talk Through appears on that feed, as well as I believe it's also on the Star Trek Picard cast feed, and the Walking Dead Talk Through. And speaking of the Walking Dead Talk Through, Kyle and LT have been continuing with Fear the Walking Dead Talk Through in my absence. The mid-season finale of Fear the Walking Dead just came out last night, and
yes, it did.
And I have not been watching it, so I'm going to try to catch up and watch all 6 of the episodes prior to tomorrow night's recording. As part of it, also, we'll be covering a new show with Maggie and Negan, titled The Walking Dead Dead City. And I haven't seen the whole episode yet, but I've seen about a third of it, and it looks pretty good so far.
I'll say. It was.
Yeah. So,
and there was actually a shocking Star Trek crossover.
Yes. And that was part of what I was going to talk about, where I said 3 worlds collide. That was one of the worlds. So anyway, our next episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Talk Through is season 2, episode 2, titled ad astra per aspera. Try to say that quickly. Written by Dana Horgan. I'm thinking of the Horgon.
That's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah. Directed by Valerie Weiss. And we don't have a description, but we do know that it involves, according to the sneak peek, we see Pike visiting a planet that has some respiratory issues, I guess, for humans. So he's wearing a kind of a
respirator.
Some kind of like built-in inhaler. So I don't know specifics about that, but we assume that the whole thing with number one will be talked about and will be center focus and hopefully resolved. But we'll see. But it's good to be back, I'll just say. And until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.